Hello. I hope everyone's doing well. I've been really looking forward to this. I've missed it all since last time. We've got some fabulous guests on this evening. Not too much news from us from Whisky Me. Um, what you will might see is that we're changing the loyalty benefits. So the next time that you log in, you might see that we're sort of changing to a like a reward stamp system. Um, some of you that have been with us for a long time, you don't need to worry. You won't lose your points. They will get converted over to the equivalent of the new system, um, and will be launched. We'll kind of give you a little bit more detail as and when, but I can tell you that there's some pretty cool benefits coming up, which is quite exciting. Um, Winter is fully here where I am in Devon. I'd be very interested to see how you guys are doing and where you're all from. And have you had your first cold snap yet? Here in Devon, we've had a little one, but not a proper one, I would say. Right, so as always, we're going to do the coin toss to see if we're going to do the traditional or the explorer, and then hopefully through technology and a little bit of magic, they will pop up. Ah, cool. So this time it's tails. So that's the explorer. So fingers crossed, we'll have someone join us. Oh, look at that.
James,
How you doing, Max?
very good, very good. Yeah, nice to be here. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm good. And you?
Yeah, no, all good, all good. Yeah, good week so far. Been looking forward to this. So yeah, pleased to
Nice.
be.
So, Max, where are we joining you?
So my name's Max. I'm the founder, co-founder of White Peak Distillery. We're based in Derbyshire on the southern edge of the Peak District, and we make single malt English whiskey. So
Awesome.
yeah, that's the overview, James.
So you're part. I think I've mentioned this on previous shows that we've done. I find English whiskey such an exciting section of the whiskey market at the moment. So yeah, tell us a little bit more about how you wanted to start a distillery, especially in England as well.
Yeah. Um, well, yeah. I mean, I'll probably start by saying that the reason I'm here is because I'm a kind of lifelong Scotch whisky fan. I mean, really, that's what I've been enjoying for the thick end of 30 years. And yeah, certainly, I think one of the things that as an English distillery, we've been very conscious of is yeah, trying to do something slightly different because yeah, if we followed, let's say, the precise rule book that they have up in Scotland, then yeah, two things really. That would have been an opportunity missed, and also fair dues to the Scotch whisky industry. It's very good at what it does. So you've almost got to think about, well, in what ways are we going to be different? So yeah, so I'm a lifelong whiskey fan, and years ago I actually met someone that was starting an urban distillery in Battersea, which has actually just been rejuvenated, kind of Phoenix from the Flames, the London Distilling Company. But one of the founders of that was a guy called Darren Rook, and I had yeah, a kind of conversation with Darren many years ago, maybe 2011, and yeah, it was just one of those kind of evenings where the seed was sown about the potential for starting my own distillery, and frankly, at that time, I had no idea there was certainly one English whiskey distillery that not only had got going but had spirit out there, and that was the English Whiskey Company, or St George's as it was called. Um, but yeah, the seed was sown, and a few years later, with a kind of I guess a business plan in Excel and lots of questions asked from lots of people, it was a kind of put up or shut up moment. I've been harboring this dream for a long time. My wife, Claire, who's the co-founder, we both still work full time in business. I think, frankly, she was getting a bit bored with me and said, look, you need to get on with this or kind of button it. So we decided to get on with it, and that was 10 years ago, nearly 10 years ago. But yeah, so glad I did.
Oh, that's fantastic. Um, it's obviously quite a difficult thing to start a distillery because you can't sell that product straight away, and so it's sitting in a cask. Did you have an idea of what you wanted the whiskey to taste like, or were you just like, we're going to make stuff and see what comes out?
Yeah, I think we had a sense in a style of whiskey that we wanted to make, and without going into details, but when you are designing the distillery, when you're thinking about the engineering, things like the shape of the stills, which obviously that's a conversation that people will be familiar with. All of these things are going to inform the style of whiskey that you can ultimately make. So you do have to think about it early on. And I mean, one of the benefits of, I guess, my experience was I hadn't worked in drinks or spirits. I was a whiskey enthusiast, and I certainly not, I didn't have an encyclopedic knowledge, but basically it meant that I had to go through a lot of detail about the whiskey making process just to understand all the stages where it's possible to create flavour. And I think not having a background in whiskey was actually advantageous because it kind of forced us in that position. We couldn't afford to employ a consultant to do everything with us, and hand us a kind of shiny set of keys when the distillery was finished. So I was there every single day. And so, yeah, so we had a sense of the style of whiskey that we needed to make. And I say needed to make because, yeah, we didn't have the ability to kind of think about a style of whiskey that would require 12 or 15 years of maturation. We needed something that would come to fruition relatively young. That was just an economic imperative. And so we thought about a lot of the flavor aspects that you might get in fermentation, in choice of yeast, in length of distillation, in shape of stills, with a view that hopefully we would have a really good quality single malt whiskey in, let's say, a 6 to 8 year period. But of course, you know, whiskey is not something that you can science, 100%. So you can have these ideas, and then there's just some magic that happens in the cask.
Hmm.
And to some extent, you're a bystander for some of that. And obviously, if your distillery has been going a couple of hundred years, you've got the benefit of understanding, how the spirit behaves in the wood. And so we're still on a learning curve. And so we had some plans, but there's still this sense of uncertainty of what you're going to get, which keeps things fun.
Yeah, fun. Bit stressful, but fun, I reckon.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but it's lovely that we make something, and
Mm.
I kind of walk into the warehouse every day, and I can see where the money's gone. And touch wood, the whiskey's landed well since we launched it just over 3 years ago, and so it kind of helps me sleep at night that I can see where the money's been spent. And yeah, for me, having that kind of a traditional product in our case whiskey is it's a really nice thing.
Yeah. So we're 10 minutes in, so I must let people try some whiskey.
Yes, absolutely.
So tell us about what we're going to be sampling this evening.
Yeah, so this is one of our core releases. It was the second core release, came out middle of 2024, so just over 12 months ago. It's called Bourbon Barrel, and kind of, it is what it says on the tin. It's been matured in first fill ex-bourbon barrels. We source them direct from Heaven Hills Distillery, and sourcing them direct, it's another thing that for us, that has a lot of benefit, but that's another story. And the thing about bourbon barrels, they are a mainstay of whiskey maturation. They're also a relatively inactive cask style. And so it means that the distillate or the distillery character is very much to the fore. I mean, let's just say, it's kind of got nowhere to hide.
Mhm.
And so, we were really looking forward to the day when we felt confident enough to put a bourbon only maturation out there. And that was middle of last year. And yeah, I think it's the most honest, expression of the whiskey that we're making, of everything that we've done. We've bottled it at 53.4%. It's kind of typical of us. We've certainly, the lowest ABV we bottled at is 46.8. Most of our releases are in the 50s. We just think it drinks well. It's got a really nice mouth feel at those sort of 50 something ABVs. We have a 3-person tasting team internally. We tend to put out what we like. And yeah, we're really proud with this bourbon barrel release. So far, we've had a lot of kind of positive responses. It certainly, it kind of chimes with what you might expect with a bourbon barrel. Some of those kind of vanilla, kind of pear drop type, flavors and aromas. Our spirit's lightly peated, and that really just comes across, I think, in the finish. And for us, it's more about background flavor and complexity. We're certainly not trying to compete with the peated whiskies. We don't want peat to be the kind of conversation, but it's about adding some background flavor. So yeah, it's now a core part of our whiskey offering, and one that we're really proud of.
There's some lovely fruitiness I get in this one.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's part of the style that we are trying to make in our spirit. And the kind of, I guess, the scale, depending on cask types, etc., kind of varies along kind of orchard fruits through to dried fruits. I think in bourbon barrel there's even some tropical fruits coming through.
I was in Glasgow recently, and I heard, I don't know if this is true or not, but I love it as a story, that there's 5 bourbon barrels resting whiskey for every single person that lives in Scotland.
Wow.
Just to give people an idea of the scale of how popular bourbon barrels are for aging whiskey.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard, James, again, don't know if it's true, that something like 75 to 80% of all the whiskey maturing in Scotland is in bourbon barrel.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about your distillery, and it sounds like we should all be planning to make a visit there, I reckon.
Yeah, so it's very much a distillery that it tries to really kind of elevate the craft of distilling. So we don't have lots of electronic control. There's a lot of kind of manual processes. Clearly, we've kind of we've spent a lot of time kind of crafting those, so we understand what we're doing. But yeah, we're doing long fermentation, so 7 days. We very keen on the flavors that you generate during that process, and yeast. So one of the things that's relatively unique for us is we use spent brewer's yeast. We work with a brewery just up the road called Thornbridge. They've been going something like 22 years. So every Wednesday we go and collect fresh spent brewer's yeast, and we're pitching that into our fermentation. So long fermentation, slow distillation, and we don't do our own malting, but we do use English barley, and then everything else in terms of the whiskey making process happens on site, including maturation, including bottling. And we're at the site of the former Wire Works, hence the brand, which dates back to the 1870s. And it's a real interesting place. It's kind of where sort of light industry meets kind of beautiful rolling hills, on a river. And yeah, we feel a bit of a kind of legacy of the businesses that ran there for nearly 150 years to this point. So yeah, you'll see, I guess, familiar copper pot stills. They've been fabricated in Scotland to our design, but then lots of our take on the whiskey making process.
So we have people that watch this from all over the world, and I know people will be going, "What is a Wire Works?"
Yeah. Okay. So the site used to make cable and wire products. So not the kind of things that you necessarily focus on, but they're certainly all over your house. And the kind of cables they used to make were for suspension bridges, the first subsea communication between England and mainland Europe. So cables laid across the the seabed across the channel were made by Johnsons and Nephews, which was the name of the business that kind of predates us. So those kind of large cables, and then things at the other end of the scale, they made barbed wire. They had about 12 different brands. But essentially, they made really good quality products that were made to last. And there's certainly some parallels, we hope, with the whiskey that we're making.
That's fantastic. So this is a wonderful whiskey, and we've got some great comments in the chat. So please keep them coming, all about your flavour notes. But tell us about the first moment when your whiskey's been sitting in those casks. You've obviously been maybe tasting it a little bit, but there will have been a time when you think, gosh, this is finally ready. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the real highlights of. I mean, literally my working week. Now we're at the point that we are at. So we started making whiskey about 8 years ago. So the business is 10 years old. Took us 2 years to install the distillery. Been making whiskey for 8 years, and we've been laying down different cask types. But literally, yeah, every week one of our distillers will come in and see me, and they've been looking at things in the warehouse and say, Max, you have got to try this. And it's kind of, hopefully you've not just had lunch, because that's going to kind of destroy the experience. But yeah, I mean, and that kind of moment when I guess just reflect on the fact that we've made this stuff is really special. But the challenging thing for whiskey is the decisions that you're tasting today were made, in our case, let's say 5, 6, 7 years ago, and so that feedback loop is really long, and to some extent it kind of makes it all the more enjoyable, hopefully, when people do like your whiskey, and certainly for us internally when we're discovering some really belting casks or things that we might have done differently, and how's that fed through to the finished whiskey. So yeah, I can remember the first time I saw our whiskey out in the great wide world 3.5 years ago, but there's a sense in which that moment's never left, because we're still enjoying the kind of fruits of our labours, and we're still learning things.
Yeah, fantastic. And so you have now built a range that I've seen. So it'd be great if you could take us through what is out there that we can go and explore, but also what are you thinking we might see from you in the future?
Yeah, so in addition to the bourbon barrel that we've got this evening, we have another core that's called Codoro. That was the brand of the cable they made at the Wire Works decades ago. We quite like the name. That's a vatting of STR casks and bourbon barrel. Kind of different take on some of the fruit you mentioned, James. Slightly lower ABV, and that's the sort of the kind of, I suppose, the entry point into our kind of whiskey range. So we have Codoro, we have bourbon barrel, and actually tomorrow we're about to launch a new release, which will be our third core. It's called Port Cask. Again, kind of what it says on the tin. It's a vatting of tawny port, barriques, and some bourbon barrels. And so that 3-release core range now is really going to form the basis of, let's say, the kind of the foundation for our distillery for the foreseeable future, in terms of whiskies that are available all year round. And then, yeah, we're still super interested in looking at those limited edition releases. In the last 12 months, we've had 9. And that's ranged from, at the moment, we've got a stout finish that's out. It's called Necessary Evil Finish. And that, again, is an extension of our relationship with the brewery up the road. They do a 13% imperial stout that's barrel aged. When they bottle their stout, we go and collect the barrels, and then we finish our whiskey in it. And we've got a number of things that I guess give us a little bit more flexibility than perhaps they've had north of the border. We brought something out earlier this year called Special Waters, which is a way of kind of maturing the water that you effectively use for cutting back the spirit for bottling. It's a process that's used in other spirits, but not commonly in whiskey. And that's been really interesting for us to look at, and just how that affects the overall experience that people have. So the limited editions are something that we're going to carry on doing, and they'll hopefully augment this core range that we've got.
I think that's just a wonderful comment that's just popped up there. Head over heels for that. I think this is a fabulous whiskey, and I'd love to just highlight what you've mentioned there, that with Scotch whiskey there are a lot of things in place to protect the consumer. So when you're buying Scotch whiskey, you know you're getting quality. English whiskey as a category is new, and I think you'd probably agree with me that finding its place with what the definitions of that whiskey is. But what's nice about that is it does allow distillers like yourself to play around, to be a little bit more free. So that's quite an exciting thing, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. I don't think there's anything that you would necessarily label English whiskey by a particular characteristic. But I think one of the common features, and I think it's really healthy for the English whiskey scene, is that certainly most of the distilleries that we know well, they're founder-led, and so they're run by people who are they're passionate about whiskey, they're passionate about what they're doing, and they've also got this kind of long-term perspective that I think just hopefully undermines quality, and that means different things for different people, but it doesn't necessarily mean we're all focused on the same thing. There's distilleries in England, for example, that are using direct fire for their stills because that's what they want to do, and that's super cool. There's other distilleries that are doing long fermentation, but it just so happens that the 7 days we've landed on, we think works really well for our spirit and the yeast we're using. And so it's an exciting time, and I think there's a lot of skin in the game from founders and still independently run, and I think that's helping to keep the bar high.
Yeah, I just find the whole English whiskey category so exciting, and I recommend to all of you, if you're looking to get a bottle and you really want to push yourself and explore something new, look at those English distilleries. Max, that's been fantastic. Thank you so much. It's a wonderful whiskey, so fruity. I love the peatiness at the end as well, and it's lovely to hear another distillery choosing to have long fermentation times. You're going to join us hopefully at the end as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll be back.
Oh, thank you so much, Max. That was wonderful.
Yeah, nice to talk to you.
Thank you. Oh, well, I hope you're all enjoying that. It's lovely to see your comments. Please keep them coming. Yeah, absolutely fabulous. I agree with in the comments, people have been saying fruitiness, pineapple, and I do love that little element of peat as well at the end. Fantastic. Okay, hopefully again, with the power and magic of technology, we have another guest joining us. This is always a little bit of a tense moment, but fingers crossed, here we go. There we go. Hello, Peter, how are you doing?
I'm good, James. Good evening, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. So, Peter, we're back in Scotland, so which distillery do we find you?
Well, I've been representing the distillery Glenfarclas for the last 24 years. I never actually worked for Glenfarclas directly. I've always worked for the distributor. So I work for a company called Paul Roger Champagne, and we do sales and marketing for many brands, but Glenfarclas is the one that I'm responsible for.
Oh, nice. I have to admit, I do have a little bit of a soft spot for Glenfarclas. Anyone that's driving around the Speyside region, you can't really miss it as a distillery.
Very true.
And tell us a little bit more about Glenfarclas, because it's quite an important distillery, I would say, in the Speyside region.
I think it is, James. I mean, the other thing as well, we class ourselves as a Highland distillery, even though we are really in the heart of, in the heart of Speyside. But what a lot of people don't realise is, Highland was first and foremost. When you go back and look at bottles from the 70s and the 80s, it will actually say on it, Glenfarclas, Glenlivet, etc., etc. So first and foremost, we've always been a Highland distillery because that was the region and Speyside came much, much later. We are still family owned, 5th generation. It started back in 1836. The Grant family took on the tenancy of a farm, really, back in 1865. And they paid the priceless sum of £511 and 19 shillings. And you think some of the bottles that we sell now are slightly more than that. So I think we've had quite a good deal over the years. Let's see.
So tell us a little bit about the whiskey that we'll be trying this evening.
Fantastic. I love the fact that I remember going to a tasting many years ago. I listened to someone and it was 25 minutes before we had our first dram, and I always said, if I'm ever in a position to do this, it will be a dram within the first 5 minutes, not 25.
It's something we're trying to get better at, if I'm honest.
100%. So what we're actually tasting this evening is something a lot of people tend to forget about, because people are looking for age when it comes to Scottish whiskey in particular. It's 10 years old. This is what we call our entry level in the UK market. We do have an 8-year-old, which is an export, but for special editions, we have so with the whiskey shop in particular, we do a wonderful range of 8, 10, and 12, and even 15. But the one we're tasting this evening is 10 years old, bottle at 40% ABV, so it's light, it's fruity, easy drinking. It's almost one of these things that I like to introduce people to 10-year-old if they don't like whiskey. There's no sharp edges to this at all. There's no prickle on the tongue. There's no burn on the back of the throat. And again, with me, I take this straight up. I think there's too many educators now will tell you how to drink your whiskey. I am very much the exact opposite. As long as you've paid for the bottle, we don't really care how you drink it, as long as you keep drinking it. But in all honesty, it's a light enough whiskey to drink on its own. But add some water, add some ice, add whatever you like to it, as long as you keep drinking it. But for me, light, floral, vanilla tones. Just listen to Max. We mature in Oloroso sherry casks, and we've been doing that for over 40 years. We're still using the same bodega we started with back in 1980, 1981, Jose Miguel Martin, and we've stuck with them. They were family, we're family, and it's been a great marriage, really, for over 40 years.
So if at the beginning of the show, we sort of spoke about bourbon barrels, how they're a relatively neutral cask. There is some influence there, the vanilla and lemons, but tell us a little bit more about what a sherry cask, what we'd be expecting to that influence on the whiskey.
I mean, what it basically builds up almost like a roller coaster with Glenfarclas. It's light, it's fruity. It's that start of it where it's nice and easy. And then as we go up through the range, just like Max is saying, his range. So we're starting off at 10 years old, and this is it here. Then we'll jump up. So this is more for a flavour profile. It's something we have in Scotland you don't have down south. It's a thing called tablet instead of toffee or fudge. This is a vanilla type tablet. So will be traditionally lots of fourth fill casks. So at Glenfarclas, we will use the cask no more than 4 times. Mm-hmm. And what we're looking for is different, is the balance. So this is traditionally would be light, fruity, almost pear drops, vanilla coming through, which you would get with bourbon barrels to a certain degree. But there's a slight sweetness that comes from the sherry cask. And this is really what's coming through in the 10 years old.
It'd be great. So we often talk about, say, first fill sherry casks, first fill bourbon casks. But I wonder if you could delve a little deeper in there about, what are the benefits of actually blending together first fill, second fill, and up to fourth fill.
What we get, and we're basically doing that, is basically the marriage of first, second, third, and fourth fill. And this is what you get in the Glenfarclas range. Because what we're looking for is that consistency, that level that people will go back to the same bottle time and time again. At Glenfarclas, we the 10, the 12, and the 105 are all in clear glass. ultimately, because the other thing we don't do, we actually don't mature. We don't add any colouring, caramel, anything to it. So that is natural colour, first and foremost. So if we are paying, I mean, at the moment, I get some figures a couple of weeks ago from Mr. Grant, the owner, and it's quite eye-watering. You know, we should be probably charging 10 times more than we're actually charging because it is in sherry. I mean, going back 10 years ago, you would be buying a Oloroso sherry butt for approximately €1,100. That's almost doubling price now when you consider it. Yeah. Yeah, and it's what Max was saying. I believe he's right. I think it is probably 85% of people are buying bourbon. You know, for that reason, I think the bourbon barrels are around about $200, $250. So that is that. We make Glenfarclas the expensive way, but we are still family owned, family run, and we've given that's the option we've got now, is exactly that. We make the whiskey the way we want to actually make it. But from a first and second, so this will be a combination, the 10-year-old, a combination of fourth and third fill casks. And then when we go up to the next one at 12, that will actually reverse round because we're looking more of a sherry influence coming through here. So it'll be slightly heavier, sweeter, more malty tones on the 12-year-old. If we jump up to 15, we're changing the ABV. Much more of a recruitment, somebody new to whiskey, someone's trying it for the first time, where 15-year-old is much more of a whiskey drinker's whiskey. It's the way I'd like to describe it. Someone who's looking for a bit of punch, that 46%, it's a much bigger flavour. You know, where a touch of water just brings it to life. You know, it is very different again. Moving up to 21, which we had to take off the market in the last few years. Sales just outstrips supply. You know, it was just crazy. Where, again, it's very much a totally different flavour. I've got lots of my wine colleagues love 21-year-old. You know, it's drier in style. It's a very long finish. And then you jump up to 25. And 25 is just Christmas in a glass. It's the only way you can describe 25-year-old. It's got that nutmeg, the dark chocolate, the Seville orange, you've not got butterscotch where you've got with 10-year-old. It's a totally different flavour, where you're much more of the first and the second fill cask. So that's where the flavour develops along the range. It's very, very different.
I've got lots of lovely comments coming in as well about Glenfarclas. It's saying there, look, it's wonderful, and I totally agree. Glenfarclas is very famous for being family owned, and I imagine that's got some real benefits to it, actually, especially with longevity of planning.
The thing is, James, it makes my job I shouldn't say this because it's got recorded, but they know anyway. It makes my job, a pleasure. Let's say that. Compared to, I mean, I've been 29 years in the industry, and I've basically represented Glenfarclas for 23 years, but I've worked for a few of the bigger boys before that. But the buck stops at Mr. Grant. If you've got a problem or you've got an idea, you phone Mr. Grant. You know, that is a great thing. I've been family owned and developing things, within Paul Roger as well. The biggest part of my job now is new product development. So we just launched a new UK exclusive last week. And it's what we call the Decanter series. So it's 5 different releases over 5 years. So this is number 4 that we launched last week. And it's a wonderful story. Last year, we launched the first of the millennium. And we believe, we're not saying it's certain, that we're the only distillery in the world that filled casks on the last day of the millennium and the first day of the millennium, new millennium. So 1999 and 2000. So last year we did the last of the millennium. The first of the millennium. This year we've done the last of the millennium. So it's almost back to the future whiskey. So the story's and it was the very last time that the current chairman, John Grant's father, visited the distillery. So it's quite a poignant moment as well. So it was family members plus the staff filled these casks, and it was literally just a handful of casks. So it's something that without being family owned, we wouldn't be able to do that. It doesn't make any commercial sense, but from a brand point and letting people and consumers and whiskey lovers taste a bit of liquid history that perhaps it would have been forgotten or, dare I say, chucked into a vatting.
Yeah, heaven forbid. And I would say visiting the distillery is an absolute must for any whiskey fan. And if they do go, they would be rewarded with probably one of the most fanciest tasting rooms, I think it's fair to say.
Yes. Yeah, that's it. I mean, we opened back in 1973. We were the second visitor centre to open. I always get mixed up. I think it might have been Glenfarclas who were the first. I think they were by about 9 months. It wasn't much of a difference, but fantastic. But we, Glenfarclas have always been wonderful for the barter system. Let's say that. Those invoices and receipts going back to the very first invoice for buying the distillery. You know, when the 185th anniversary, we launched 185th anniversary bottling, and we actually put a copy of the actual invoice of the distillery inside the bottle, inside the tube. So that was part of it. But 1973, we opened the visitor centre and people flocked to it, and have still been going since. But to actually finish one of the rooms, it's actually the panelling came off the Empress of Australia, which has been a various ship in various forms over the years. It's, you know, it was a plane, you name it. So it was getting broken up in Rosyth docks, and John Grant's father, George, happened to be passing by, and needless to say, the first class smoking lounge, all the panelling made its way, and it's now called the Ship's Room at the Visitor Centre, which it's a nice story, because if you spend too much time in it, you could be swayed one way or another, and we just say it's to do with the Ship's Room. It's nothing to do with the whiskey.
Yeah. And it is just one of those absolute joys of a room to visit. Just absolutely stunning. So you kind of alluded to there with some of the expressions that you're bringing out, but what should we be looking out for or hoping for to see in the future from Glenfarclas?
I was up at Glenfarclas last week, a couple of days, and I took some new colleagues up to let them experience it. And we take all our colleagues all over the world, really, you know, from a wine point, whiskey point. But what I was surprised to see is Glenfarclas are just building 6 new warehouses. Oh. When the rest of the industry it's tough, it's difficult, there's lots of gloom and doom. Glenfarclas forged their way through this. They've seen it before. They've seen it in the early 70s, the early 80s with the miners' strikes, the 90s, then the 2008. But Glenfarclas, what they tend to do, and it is to do with being family owned, they carve their own way. So they are actually building, you know, 6 new warehousings. You know, this is for the future. You know, the current chairman's 74 years old. He'll never see that with the best will in the world. But it is protecting for the next generation. Coming up next year, there will be 1 or 2. I release maybe 1, possibly 2 limited editions a year. You know, that's the thing. But this year, from a global point, we launched our oldest whiskey, and it was 70 years old, 70.
Impressive.
And we went down the route of no fancy box, no fancy decanter. It was inside the bottle that counted. So we released it was in the region of £20,000, and it was only 256 bottles, 1 cask, and I personally sold 10 bottles in 3 hours, just in the UK. So there is a wonderful appetite for that style of whiskey.
Yeah. That's one of the. I do genuinely have a real soft spot for Glenfarclas, and the branding as well, which has stayed very consistent for a long time. Yeah, there you go.
Great story behind that as well.
Yeah, go on. Tell us about the red door.
Red door, red jumpers, red everything. So John Grant tells the story that as a young kid coming back to the distillery from nursery school, aged something like 3 or 4, and his father had painted all the doors of the distillery poppy red, and they're still the same. And that was back in 1954, 55. It looks marvellous, but it was even more so when back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, when we had proper winter, when the snow could reach 6, 7 feet at the distillery. So you could quite clearly see the red doors through the snow. And it's not until you visit it, you do realise it. You go, yeah, that's possible.
Yeah. It's a fantastic thing. And although I don't have the money, when I was last there, I was visiting the mash tun, and they've got your family. What's the range called? Please remind me.
Family cask.
The family cask.
Family cask,
So
yeah.
any of you are lucky enough to be in that area, they'll have a wonderful bottle from each year. And if you've got the money, you can probably sample a dram from your birth year.
They were the first on-trade pub restaurant to have the full set back in 2007.
Gosh,
and they've
how
actually
impressive.
maintained all that. So 1952 was the oldest, 1994, 43 consecutive vintages. If you could afford it back then, it was £12,500 for the full set. For the full set now, it'll be in the region of 290,000. So it's certainly, and it's the biggest pain in the backside ever.
Is it really? I can only imagine. Oh, so Peter, that's been wonderful. Thank you so much. I genuinely look.
Thank you, James.
Whiskey, and you're going to join us as well in a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. Good to see you. I think that's just been absolutely fabulous. I guess it's all about contrasts this time. So we've had a very long established distillery, family owned, that's had that privilege of time to build up the business, contrasted with a very new business being very brave, setting out, not sure how things are going to go. How's the whiskey going to taste? We've also compared bourbon barrels, their influence against sherry casks. And that's the wonderful world of whiskey. So hopefully, again, I'm always, seems like I'm being down on technology, but it's more me being a little bit nervous, thinking I have to talk to you while things are happening. Hopefully, we can reintroduce both our guests. Hey,
James.
Well, that was wonderful, guys. So, unfortunately, Peter, I don't think you have a sample of the Wire Works. It's a real shame. So we'll bluff our way through it.
I've tasted it very recently, James. So it's
fantastic,
fabulous for the. No, I won't go into much. I tasted it a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, fantastic. And Max, and what's your thoughts on Glenfarclas?
Yeah, I've really been enjoying it. Kind of sat here and actually, I hadn't thought about it before we came online, but I think it's a really good pairing with Peter because, yeah, Glenfarclas is a family-owned distillery. Obviously, it's got this, huge, century-plus kind of history. And as you said, we're starting out on our journey, but I think, some interesting parallels. But yeah, no, really enjoyed it. I think, it's very approachable whiskey. As you say, that kind of the Oloroso cask is, it's a different expression to, the bourbon barrel that we've got this evening from Wire Works. But yeah, really been enjoying it. Really just a nice after dinner drink.
Yeah, very much so. So Peter, this has become a bit of a tradition, really, this question. What are your thoughts on whiskey going forward? What should we be looking out for? What are you fearful for? What are you excited about? Take that question however you want, really.
No, I think it's probably one of the most exciting. I mean, I've been working in the industry almost 30 years, so I've seen peaks and troughs and people coming and going. And a bit like Max, we've represented various different brands over the years. So we looked after Cahoman for 5-6 years. When we've looked after cognac, we looked after vodka. We've done various different brand building exercises for other brands. But now I just think the investment that's came around particularly in the last 10 years is, I think the industry's healthier than it's ever been. And the fact that we're sitting here doing this as well. Yeah, and dare I say, through COVID, I carried out 200 online tastings in 2 years. So there is this interest, this real appetite. And particularly, I think the likes of all the English distilleries. Wow, that between England and Ireland, these guys are really catching up a fair rate of knots, real rate of knots. What's happening over in Ireland as well, but we shouldn't really be looking at Japan for me any longer or further afield. Let's concentrate actually what's right on our doorstep. Let's encourage that. Let's drink more of it. And doing events like this is fabulous, so we can all learn from each other. It's but yeah, long may it continue.
Yeah, very much so. And Max, the same question to you. How would you answer that?
Yeah, I mean, whiskey is certainly a long-term business, and we're just at the start of our journey. I think it would be fair to say that the industry is in a bit of a tight spot at the moment. But I think if we look beyond that, then I think it's a wonderful time for the whiskey consumer, because there's a sense in which certainly with the advent of lots of world whiskey, and Peter's right, there's a lot of kind of eyes being focused on Japan for many years, but there's great whiskey being made in many places today. But I think it's elevating the overall quality, which I think is great for consumers. And I just think we'll see a continuation of that. And look, there could be some shakeouts in the coming years in terms of, are all the brands that are around today going to exist in 5 years' time? Well, who knows? But I think for whiskey drinkers, I think it's very exciting the next few years. I mean, we're certainly looking forward to it. But I think, just generally speaking, if you're a whiskey enthusiast, a whiskey consumer, I think there's lots of things to look forward to in the coming years.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we're going to see some exciting bottlings coming out soon, I reckon. Well, thank you both. Thank you so much to both of you. It's been absolutely fabulous. I thoroughly enjoy these things. I'm going to say goodbye to you both, and then I'm going to wrap the show up. But thank you so much for your time and for sharing your drams. They've been fabulous.
Thanks, James.
Thank you, guys.
And
thanks, Max. Thanks, James.
Nice to meet you, Peter.
You too, Max. Thank you.
Well, there you go. That was a great show. I really enjoyed that. And thank you so much for all of you being here, and for any of you that are watching afterwards as well. Please keep the comments coming. We're really trying to make this show the best we possibly can. So if you have any suggestions, things that you want us to add to the show, please let us know. But from us, this is an absolute joy to do. So I hope you all have a lovely evening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.